Greetings and welcome to a webinar on how to create, design, and structure online trainings. This is a business case exercise made for Nubank. Before we start, I have a few considerations. This webinar is asynchronous, so you don't have space for typing your questions or asking me for some support. But please, feel free to get in touch with me. I can provide you some guidance on some topics or maybe in some theories that I pointed to this webinar. Also, this was made for trainers, so they have a basic knowledge of the Malcolm Knowles principle of adult learning theory, an example, or Brooks, Tuckman, Clock, and maybe Rutcon, who knows. It requires a background in training adults, and this is an overview of possibilities. We can do a lot of things in online training, but it depends on software, it depends on hardware, or maybe an employee experience strategy, or maybe a branding. So we have a lot of things that must be put in count before we said that this is able or not able to do. But please feel free once again to reach me and I'll point some solutions or alternatives for you. For our start, we have the agenda. I split the whole content in two topics. The first one, I will discuss about the key differences between classroom and online training. You're gonna see that they're not that different. We have a few things that we need to change, but I'll talk about it later. Then we're gonna talk about how to develop your first online training and everything that you have to put into balance before we start. So our first topic, the key differences, let's start talking about learning in a classroom. I know we have a lot of theories, we have a lot of methods, we had a lot of models and concepts and everything else. So I'm trying to be the most abstract as possible, the simplest thing or the simplest design of a learning process. First, we have the trainer, which is the person who has the most knowledge or who possess the knowledge, the matter. Then we have the participants that are going to be the people to be developed, that are going to receive the knowledge. Then we start the knowledge transfer, which can occur by various ways. And then we have inside the participants, inside the groups, the Tuckman clock, the stages of a group development. So they have a task or they have some knowledge, they need to work it out, they need to find their ways. So you have a lot of things going on, and as you're in a classroom, you're seeing this, you're perceiving this, and after they process all the knowledge, they give you back a feedback, which is quite important. The feedback I will talk a little bit more later on, and more than this, more than the feedback and more the knowledge transfer, you have media. Media is used for a link between the trainer and participants. It doesn't need necessarily to exist. You can run a training only by storytelling or maybe using a flip chart. Even a flip chart is a media, sorry. But you can do this only by talking and make some facilitation or maybe a debate or something like that. Media is not necessarily needed for a good learning in classroom, a good learning unit. I talked about the feedback a few moments ago, and this is really important because when we have, let's take an example. Do you guys remember the Johari window? We have those four sides, the four dimensions that we are talking about when we have a feedback. And the objective to have a feedback in a classroom training is that you can expand the arena. So you reduce the blind spot, you reduce the facade, and you reduce the unknowns. Unknowns, and especially unknowns, which is a good concept, are the things that every trainer must try to avoid always. You need to reduce the unknown and be more comfortable for you and for the participants to develop some training, develop some skills. Once you receive the feedback, then your classroom training it's about to be complete. You just need to have your measures or staging or whatever you need. So let's take a look at what happens in an online training. Learning online, it's quite similar. You have the trainer or the content or the source, whatever you want to call it. You have the participants. And since we're talking about being online, it's really hard to figure that a person is learning alone since it's inserted in a community, in the society, and the society all all of its person have gone digital, one person's always surrounded by others in the digital media. So he's not learning alone anymore. You can just send a knowledge for him, can transfer knowledge to him, but surely he will try to find it out people in his small circle of knowing, or maybe neighbors, or maybe parents who have that knowledge. He will try to socialize this knowledge with others. So I'm just assuming that we do not have a single training, it's always a group training. Even if you're not directing the message for the whole group or only part of it. So we have the trainer, we have the participant, we have the knowledge transfer, which can occur as the same way in a various ways. Then we have the lack of the viewing of the participants, and also we have the feedback with a delay or with some disturbances or noises, or maybe the feedback won't even come if we are talking about an asynchronous training example. Sometimes the feedback just won't come, and I need to be prepared to that. And one major difference that the media is not what link both. Media is not what links trainer and participants. Media is what is surrounding them. Both of them are embedded in media. It wasn't for the media, there wasn't learning online. So we need always to keep in mind, because the media is the key for this process. Let's just point it out the key differences. So we have the media role being really much important now than was in the classroom training. We have the knowledge processing inside of the group. The group development is not clear for the trainer, especially if it's in an asynchronous training. So you need to be real sure of what you have made for that online training. Otherwise, you won't know what happened there. You can assume things, but it's not safe. And the importance of the feedback, it's much more appreciated in the online, as it's not easy to have a feedback. Once you have ways to reach that feedback, it's wonderful, because you know what's going on, you know what's understanding. So probably now you must be questioning what is all about, what is all about online training. And I would tell you, online training, it's more than strategy. You need culture. You need to tell people that they need to learn. You need to tell people that learn is not something that it's good for the business. It's good for him. He needs to understand that we need a new culture of learning. Most people avoid learning at work because they had bad experiences in classroom trainings when they were a child, or they think this is boring, or maybe they face a trainer that didn't know the principles of training of Malcolm Now as an example. So andragogy is not something that everybody knows, and we need to take it on the radar to don't forget it. Also, when we talk about online training, motivation precedes the learning. When I say that motivation precedes learning, it means that when we have classroom trainings in a business, people are sent for the classroom by their bosses, and it's more a business thing than a personal development thing. That's the way people face it. It's not necessarily what really happens, but in their minds, it is what it is. So when we talk about online training, which can be made anywhere, anytime, people want to need to do that. They must see some benefits from doing that. So remember that talking about culture is here where we have the real difference between it. And then we need always to put in mind that what learning must be like. I mean, when we say learning must be a marathon, not a sprint, or any kind of, I don't know, advice that it might seem, we need always to take care of what learning must be like. For me, it must be like a walk in a park. It must be pleasant, it must be entertaining, it must be fun, it must be good, it must be light. But also it must give me good reflections and inflections. So always put this on side to remember what learning must be like for me, for my personal tastes and my personal goods, and also for my audience. We're gonna talk about it later. We have some pros and cons of the online training. For the pros, we have the interactivity. So we have a lot of tools that we can just put the participant in a virtual reality You can magnify it to reality, insert virtual objects. So we have a lot of technology to surround the participant. Also, the scalability is a good pros because once you develop a unit for 10 people or 20 people, you can one day to another train more than 10,000 or 4,000, depends to you and depends on your project and needs, of course. Also, you have a good availability. Availability is a key when we talk about online trainings. Online trainings must happen when the participant wants. Of course, we have synchronous and asynchronous kinds, but here is said that whenever it's possible, the learning must be free for the participant. He doesn't need to face boundaries to his will to learn. Otherwise, he will feel frustrated and will be demotivated. And also, online trainings are fully customizable. You can use some templates, you can use some modules that you can buy it, but every time you talk about online things, most of them are customizable. It is really good. And now we have the cons, because nothing in the universe have only pros. You have always to have resources when we talk about online training. It means that you have to have power, you have to have internet, you have to have a medium, or I don't know, your participant also have to do that. Let's say that you schedule a webinar and that day you do not have internet, you have to postpone it, you have to call the participants, and it's a tremendous headache. Trust me, you don't want that. And this also means that you need some parallel actions to ensure the training. So it's not one webinar that you're gonna do the whole process of knowledge transferring and knowledge building. You need to have other ways to, like learning pills. You can have forums. You can have a lot of methods and tools from the online learning category, which I'm gonna discuss later on too. And also, time is another key. When we talk about online training, if you're trying to put everything inside of a basket, a lot of technology, a lot of tools, a lot of interactivity, it's gonna take more time than you think, even more time sometimes than for designing a classroom training. So if you have to draw or have to design an online training, please keep in mind that time is a key for the success of your project. So time management really is a must-have. After the pros and cons, then we go for the golden secret. Most people don't pay too much attention and don't believe when we talk about online training because they say, I think that people won't like to do that. But you know what? Studies suggest that online interaction encourages participation and more substantive discussion. I pointed out two studies made in 1997, also in 2000, that says the opposite of the common sense. When we are online, we have more interaction and we have more discussion. But why that? Social interaction. This is the why. Once we are online, things change. Let's take an example. Remember when you were a child, it was in the school, the math teacher passed some algebra, you start solving the puzzle on the blackboard, you have a question, you raise your hand, then you start to be scared of what other people are gonna think about you. And then suddenly start the bullying and people start pointing fingers, and then for the rest of your life you always think twice before raising your hand and making a question. In an online training, this can be easily avoided. You have tools like chats or frequently asked questions or maybe text box that your participant can just write his questions without being identified, and easily he will be trying to learn by its own willingness to learn. So we don't have bullying anymore. Also, when we talk about online learning, we have the familiarity with the media. He is already a natural born internet user almost. People today know how to navigate in the internet on the desktop and on a mobile, so they're pretty good familiar with that. And also the social interactions enable us to use storytelling and analogies. I know that in classroom you use it a lot, but online it's almost a must-have for any successful training. Why is that? Because training, when it comes online, it must be all the times as possible entertainment and fun. Otherwise, if it's not that, if you don't have a light, smooth atmosphere for the training, participants will start to seeing just a simple transfer knowledge, and they're just gonna cheat on the exams. The knowledge won't be built inside of them. They won't be developed really. So once the more digital we go, the more human values are needed. Talking about human values, I just put some bold tests on the four principles of adult learning by Malcolm Knowles, and all of them results in the I statement. So adults want or need to be involved. I want. So if you're developing a webinar or an online training, remember that the adults need to be involved. So you want him to do some action. Adults gain more when they can build past experiences in the learning process. So again, I want to be involved and I want to bring my experiences inside of this training. This is important to me. And then they need to solve problems. So I want to be involved, I want to bring my experience, I want to solve problems. And the master key for your success in online training, it's the how can I use this information now? People need to know, okay, you're talking me a lot of concepts and models, everything else, but how can I put this into action right now in results? How do I translate it into actions? And this is the goal. Remember, online training, how can I use this information now? Plus, when we talk about social interactions and all things that online learning enables, I'm a humanist, I like the theme-centered interactions by Rutcon, which is a really good concept. As you guys can see on the screen, we have the I, the it, and the we. So we have three sides of interactions. So we have the individual as in the I, the we is the group, the it is the matter, and surrounding them we have the globe. You guys notice that we have a common center for all of this, which is the balance. So in all actions that we have, the more balanced the action is, the better the results are. I and we have interactions, I and it have an interactions, it and we have, and also the globe push everything into different balances, and it's up to you as a trainer, as an instructional designer, to keep the balance always on the center, to value the them-centered interactions. That said, the differences are shown, and we put all the periods in the sentences. It's time to focus on the topic number 2, which are how to develop your first online training. The basic steps, which are the planning for that. First, you need to set up your objectives. This is really important. Then, know the audience, know how to measure that, understand the media, design and develop, build and validate. We're going to explain it further. For the learning objectives, this is really, really important. When you have clear objectives for the course, for the topics, for the units, it became really, really much more easier to run your online training. When you go for a classroom training, you have space for creativity inside of the class. If you feel that you have a gap of knowledge, you can correct on the go. If you feel that the learners are upskilled, you can just raise the bar or you can just lower the bar, it's up to you. But online it doesn't have it. So clear objectives makes it easy for you to split the content and also to understand the course length. This is something really important. 1 hour of classroom training is not necessarily equals to 1 hour of online training. So we need to keep that in mind. If your training had 8 hours in a classroom training, probably it can expand for up to 16 or maybe 32 hours. It depends how you're splitting and transferring that knowledge. The medias you're going to use, text or whatever, so you need to calculate it very well. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem with that. So please keep in mind, objectives are really, really important here. To understand your audience, we have 3 things that are really important. The impact of learning in this professional. I mean, you assume that this professional is going to your online training. When he comes back to his position, what's going to be the reflection of that training in his job? What we really want him to be doing after the end of the online training? Not the only unit online training, but the whole process of the online training in some matter that you want, an example. The behavior here is important, and also the results that it brings. Also, you need to understand the media habits of your audience. What do they use more? Is the desktop? Is the mobile? Are they seniors and like newspapers online? Or they are young and like podcasts? So understand the ways that they use and they consume media, not only for learning but also for entertainment. Remember, online learning must be entertaining always. And also we have to understand the needs. And this is really, really important. It's not the needs of the participants. Here you have to put in balance the needs of the stakeholder, the project sponsor, or maybe the business partner. You have to understand all the needs in the same system because sometimes it's not a real need for the participant, but it's a need of the sponsor, and you need to figure it out what's going on because you can be in the bad sheets if you develop the whole training only focusing the needs of the participant, but you forget the needs of the business. So keep in mind to understand the needs before proceed. After you know your audience, it's time to check it out how you're going to measure that. I just check here two different ways to measure the effectiveness of your learning unit, your online learning. You can measure it through business results, or you can measure it through the daily routine. Through business results, it's all to the business metrics, which are numbers and figures. And what is on the sheet, it's true. The sales didn't come, or we didn't send too many packages, or any kind of index of a business metric that you have. So this is a fast result with medium accuracy, since the results depends of the market sometimes, or maybe the interactions with other people that wasn't trained. So you have a focus on the business development, not necessarily on the professional development. Another way to measure that I spoke before, it was the daily routine when you have the business KPI. So you understand how the training will impact in the performance of the professional. So you understand where you're going to need to watch its interactions, its interfaces, and the outcomes of that. So it's a joint effort to have, like I say, a virtual benchmarking. The best professional that was trained should act like this. And now we can just compare with John Doe, which is doing this, which is doing that. So you have a balance to understand how his performance. But the main problem with that is that our mid to long term results is not that fast, and you have a high focus on the participant behavior. So you are really concerned in the personal development of that subject when we talk about analyzing the business KPIs and the behavior of the professional after the training online. Then we have the media fit, which, as you guys know, is the main difference, the media. So when we talk about the media fit here, it must be clear for you guys that every kind of media has its own specifications and indications. Sometimes you say, I want to do a video about this, I want to do a decision tree about this, or I want to do a quiz. But your media doesn't allow that. Sometimes it's not all content that can go for the mobile. Sometimes it's not the kind of content that you want to go for a web page, an example. So you need to always understand the media you're working with to understand your possibilities. Also can bring for the online training all the methods that you have in a classroom training, like the problem-based learning or learning through teaching or whatever method that you like. You can just bring it on the online training and understand many tools that we have to make the interactions or maybe the information to perceive all participants. Also, when we talk about media, we have a lot of formats that we can use. We can use web pages, videos, infographics, chats, wikis, webinars, learning pills, and a lot of other resources that might suit your needs. So please feel free to ask me and we can discuss the many formats that you have. And this all is nothing if you don't have strategy. Please have a strategy for your participant. He needs that. He needs the structure, and we need to provide him the structure. Here I have an example of how we can just chop the content of a module in more than one action. Here I chop the content in three modules. So first we have the module one, which is a webinar and corresponds to 25% of the content. After that, I have quizzes inside of this module, of course, but I have a knowledge check, which is a statement that this participant had transferred 25%. After that quiz, I can create like a decision tree. He chooses he wants to run a video training or he wants to run a web page scrolling. It depends of him. Both of them have the equal content, and then we have 25% of the content for both as well. After that, after he assumes this kind of media, this format, he goes for the module tree. When I pick a problem-based learning example, it can be a video with a decision tree in which I present a real business case problem for him and he have to solve it. And it corresponds to 50% of the content. So in the sum, you have the 100% of the content. And then when we end all these modules and we certify that he really understands it all, we need to have always a conclusion. Online training demands that you always give next steps for the learner. Since you're not in the classroom, you're not pointing him on north. When he ends, I mean, in all the times when it's able or it's possible, please give next step for your learners, for your training participants, because online training is solitary sometimes, even being inside of a society with a lot of media. You have too much information, and when we talk about digital, it's about being human. So please give next steps for your participants. They're gonna like it. It's really good for your training unit. After you have the media, it's time to design and develop. So here comes the challenge. When we talk about designing and developing, it means that you have the most hard barrier, which is communication. You're not there. You're not there to assure what the participant is understanding. So please understand that we cannot not communicate. This is an axiom by Paul Václavic. And if you think, even in the classroom, the silence is a communication. Online, a bold text is a communication. A color is a communication. A format is a communication. So always, everything you do is a communication for the participant, and you need to be aware of the representation of colors and forms, and maybe it's a cultural or a background of your participant. So you always have to keep in mind that we cannot not communicate. Also, the challenge of the communication is potentialized by the simplicity. To keep it simple is the hardest task. If you can do an online training for, to talk about the universe, and you can easily explain it for a child, you're in the right track. Because we not can assume that online training as entertainment can last more than 1 hour of just concept and abstract talking. So please keep it simple always. This is good because you can avoid misunderstandings. And at last but not least, always remember of the branding. Ask for the guys of the branding if they have the manual of tone and voice of the brand, the colors, the shapes, the forms, and everything else. They have a visual identity that must be respected. Even being an online training, sometimes people take screenshots or maybe take photos. They can send it for the social media or the social platforms. And always, please keep in mind that branding is something that we must follow always when we talk about online training as well. Now we need to talk about build a solution. After we have all these on mind, it's time to go for the computer and start building it on. You can just use some online tools, you can use softwares. Here being some authoring tools which I like very much, which is Adobe Captivate. It's what you see what you get, You can make the table, put the videos, put the infos, put the pictures, everything you want. And with a click, you just make this Corm package, I'll talk about it later. Or you can just export for the web and you're ready to go. On the other hand, we have also Articulate, which is a software that I like. I really like it. And it's really simple to use. It's like doing web pages. It has a lot of interactions. It's really dynamic, and your learning curve will be really, really fast with that software. Also, they have a large community online, which can just send your questions and guys reply to you in the same day. It's really good. I'm really passionate about using Articulate. So whenever authoring tool you use, you're gonna need it since you have an LMS system to ensure that your participants are watching the videos or the content. So the Swarm package that I talked previously, it's a format to declare all the objects used in that learning unit, which are the videos or the web pages, the quizzes or everything else. And its data it's transferred for the system. So when you start scrolling the web page, it says, oh, it scrolls 10%, 25, 30, 17, blah, blah, blah. So this is really important to understand how Swarm works. If you guys have any doubts, once again, reach me. And Swarm has many versions, so please be aware of the version that your LMS uses before making your Swarm package. LMS platforms are really good. They are systems LMS, learning management systems. They are systems that track your participants' records so you can just understand how much they learn, where they learn, how they learn, and everything else by numbers. So every time you scroll a content or you see a web page that is, of course, registered in the LMS, it gives a number for the computer saying, John Doe had read 30% of his knowledge trail in business, an example. So you have a more 70% to run with that participant. LMS, it's a good tool to understand the participant needs or maybe some special training actions. After we have all these, you can just test and deploy your package to understand if your online training is complete and fulfills all the needs that we previously stated on our project. That said, we have the validation. You're gonna make a small pilot, an example for 10, 20 people. After the course, please ask them for the feedback. It's the most sincere validation that you can have. But remember, Choose One Tool gave us the four side models of a message. So when a participant tells you, I didn't like that, it's not what I want. Sometimes it's not what he really wants to say, You have four sides of a message like the drawing, you have a self-revelation, you have factual information, appeal, and a relationship. So sometimes it's not with you, it's not with your work, it's his background. So you need to understand and have a deep analysis on that message. What does the participant really wants to tell you? I didn't want to do the training at that time. The training was even good, but my boss, it's such a headache. So you need really to avoid that and try to understand what he wants to do. As a conclusion, online training and classroom training are not equals, neither enemies. You should always think them as friends, or maybe close friends. You need to focus always on the participant experience. We are living the age of the experience, and after all these things that are happening in the world, people are going to be more at home. So let's have great times at home, at work, or learning. The most, the better. And please, do tests. All I said here are just surface talking. We didn't take a deep dive in online training and classroom training. So we have a lot of methods, tools, concepts, models. So please feel free to understand what so it's better your needs and your goals in your career. Because sometimes you understand that training online is not for me. I just want to classroom training is only. Oh, it's okay. Or classroom trainings are not that good. Now I understand that online training is the huge trend. I want you to take a deep dive. It's okay. Let's go there. Please feel free. Training must be fun for everyone, for trainers and participants. With all said, thank you very much. Thanks for your attention and hope to see you again.